What if Tony Stark became a villain and ruled the world with his technology?
If Tony Stark became a villain, he would utilize his vast technological expertise and vast resources to establish a dystopian regime, using his Iron Legion and advanced AI systems to maintain control and crush any opposition.
Whatever the today latest news.
Germany is unlocking billions to supercharge its military at a seismic moment for Europe, CNN.
Who is Mahendra Singh Dhoni? Search on Wikipedia.
Mahendra Singh Dhoni is a former Indian international cricketer who served as the captain of the Indian national team, leading the team to numerous victories, including 2 World Cup titles and a Champions Trophy.
Open YouTube.
Opening YouTube.
Open Google.
Opening Google.
Open GitHub.
Opening GitHub.
So hi everyone and welcome back to the Monstack project series. In this video, we're going to be creating here a Jarvis AI using Express.js and Node.js. So without wasting any time, let us start our tutorial right now. In order to creating here the Jarvis AI, you need to install here the Node.js in your system. Just go on the Node.js website and installing here the LTS version. In the case of code editor, you're going to be using here the Visual Studio Code. Just go on the website of the Visual Studio Code and downloading it and set up in your PC. Make your hand dirty and be ready for making your own Jarvis using Node.js. So let's go on here and creating here our package.json file. So what I can do, we can simply go using here npm init and we can making everything as a yes. So it will creating here a package.json file. And after that, you're going to installing here the required packages in order to building here our Jarvis. Perfect. It will creating here package.json file. You can see package.json. It has the name, versions, main, which one is nothing but a script that you're creating that, and keyword, author, license, description. You can also add it to here. Now we're going to installing here the packages. So let's say npm I for install. We're going to first installing here the Express, because using Express you're going to creating here our servers. Then you're going to installing here the Axios. Using Axios you can do the API calls. Then the body parsers. So using body parser you can parsing here the data from the body, and we have the cheer io, so that we can also starting here the HTML tag element from that, just like the selenium library in Python. It's called cheer io. Then you have the .env, so that you can all loading here the data from the environmental variables, as well as we're going to installing here the Groq SDK, because you're going to using here the free and open source model, and Groq is provide you the free and open source model. You can access it easily. Groq SDK. Then you have the node event, so that our applications or our server is are running every time while it's saving or changing something inside our files. Then you have the open, so that we can also open the link, just like if the user say open YouTube, it will open the YouTube as a link. Then you have the say, and our Jarvis can speak. Now enter. So make sure that you have a strong internet connection. It will installing and it will taking few time. So all right, in installing here are the packages inside this node module folder, as well as you can see here all of the dependencies is available inside these dependency sections. Now we're going to creating here our index.js file. So you can create it inside that. So we're going to creating here index.js, where you can writing here our server side code. And also we're going to do some changes inside this package.json file. Let's say first we're going to give it here type as the module. So it should be type. Type is nothing but the module. So you can give it like that, module. And also going to changing something inside the script. I mean, we're going to adding here the node amounts, so that while we do some changes inside our index.js or any kind of JS file, it will automatically start the servers. So you can say start equal to node amount index.js. That's it. Now you can save it. Now we can go inside this index.js. Now we can start writing our code. So first you can importing here the Express. So after the ES7, you can using here this input statement without using here the required statement on here. So let's say import Express from Express, and after that you're going to creating here our application. Let's say Express. So let's make it const, because it's not changes. So let's say constant, and after that we're going to listening to our server. Let's app.listen, and then inside that you need to give it here on port number. So let's initialize the port. So let's say const port. So it's better you can add this port number inside your .env file, because this is a confidential information. So the confidential information we are going to save it inside our root folder. I mean, sorry, inside our .env files. So let's add it. Let's .env. So let's make it .env. And inside that, you're going to give it here port is equal to, let's say, 8080. Just make sure that your port is opened, it's not used anything else. So let's close it. Now you can also access your port. So first you need to import here the .env. So let's import here the .env from .env. Then you also config your .env. So let's say not the default, actually it's going to be .env.config. So it will give me some auto suggestions because of I'm actually using here extension called the Codium. You can also using here the GitHub Copilot, same thing. But Codium is free to use. You can also set up in your VS Code and it will give you some auto suggestions and it will try to make your coding journey quite more fast and efficient way. Okay. So now we can access it. So you can access it process.env, and inside that you're going to access here the port. If the port is not open, we're simply going to making port as a 3000 if the port is not accessible or if the port is used by somewhere else. Now you're going to add it to the port, and inside this port it will creating here calling here a callback function, and I can say that listening on port these ones. Okay, we can also installing here another packages, so you can install it. So what you can do, you can also installing here the colors so that it's look cool, right? So you can installing, let's say npm I colors. So you can also adding here some colors inside your consoles. It's look cool, right? Just for calling things, I actually do it. So let's import it. So let's say import colors from colors, and then you can simply going to add it inside that. So you can use it. Let's say it's nothing but bg. Let's say bg green because it's running, and you make it as a white. Now let's save it and go on the consoles. And now you're going to using here the npm start. Let's say npm start. So it will, you can see node amount index.js, and it will try to actually running here our servers. You can see static node index.js starting the servers. Okay, it will taking few times. You can see here listening on port 8080. Also you can see the green signal, right? So you can also see it inside your postman, or you can also see it inside your browsers. So browsers support only the get request, so we can using here app.get. So you can see when I changes something inside that, it will automatically restore the servers. That's why node amount is coming to the picture, right? So let's close it, and we simply going to give it here the get request, and inside that we simply going to send here one request. Let's say name Jarvis, version is 1.0. You can sending here JSON file. Otherwise you can also sending here the response. So you can sending here, let's say res.send, and you can also send here, let's say Jarvis here. Okay, Jarvis here. So you can access it from your local web browsers. So go on here and you can see starting the server. Now you can go inside the browsers. Yeah, that's for browsers. So you can see Ganpati Papa. Okay, that's cool. So now let's say local host, and now you can say that 8080. So you can see here Jarvis here. Cool. So you can also access it from our postman as well. So if I give it here, so just if I go on here, if I copy this link, if I go on here, if I paste it to here, and if I click on send, it will also send a request on here. So you can see Jarvis here. Cool, our server is working. Now what I can do is simply going to creating here some of the folder structure. So it's better you can also importing the body parsers. So let's import the body parser so that you don't need to do it again because it's an important part. It's a BitLoader into add it just because of you're going to adding something from the user sides. So we can add it, the BitLoader inside that. So you can using here, let's say app.use, and you can simply going to using here this body parsers, body parser.jsons, as well as we can using here the body parser dot URL encoded. So let's say URL encoded. So body parser dot URL encoded, and simply going to make it extension as a true. Simple as that. Now I'm going to creating here a folder structure. So what I can do, you can go inside this our root folder, and inside this folder I'm going to creating here four or five folders. Maybe first. So first we are going to creating the folder for the controllers, and then we have to creating here the folders for the routes, where you can managing our routes. And then after that you're going to creating here the folder for services, because you're going to creating here three services. One is for the Wikipedia, the news, and our large language model response. So it will go inside of services, and then you're going to creating here another folder for views, because you're not going to using here any React.js. So if you're not creating here if you're not creating here the applications using React.js, yes, you can also use the React.js. That's a welcome point. Okay, but in this case I'm just going to using here the EJS. Okay, or I can using here the HTML part. So in this inside this BUs folder, I just have the all of my HTML files. Okay, so you can also use the React.js if you're an expert on that. Okay, now what I can do first, we're going to creating here our routes. So we simply going to go inside this route folder, and inside this route folder I'm going to creating here a file called virtual routes.js. So let's say virtual routes, because this is a virtual assistant. Virtual routes, let's make it route because you have the single route. Just import it the virtual route.js. Okay, fine. Now let's import here the express, because it's express is needed. Let's say express from express thoda pani bhi leto. Okay, so we're back again. Sorry for the interruptions. Now let's creating the router. Let's say const, we're going to creating the router is equal to express.router. Just we're going to creating an instance of that. Now after that, what I can do is simply going to using the router.post, just because of we're going to hit here on post request to our server, and inside this post request I'm just going to give it here one name. Let's get here, let's say virtual assistant, like that. Okay, let's say assistant. So let's make it as assistant. Assistant. Okay, assistant, like that, because spelling should be correct. And then after that, you're going to creating here a call of functions, and inside this call of function you can also send in the request. Let's say rest dot send. We can say that, let's say Jarvis here, or you can also send in here, let's say yes, controller is calling, like that, just for testing purpose. Let's say controller is calling. Okay, then we need to export here the router. Let's export default the router. That's it. Now I'm going to add this router inside our app.jsx. Sorry, js. So let's import here the virtual. So the virtual routes from the virtual route.js. Now you can simply going to use it. Let's say app.use, and inside that you need to give it here one name. Let's give it here Zorbeach, and then after that you need to calling here this virtual route. That's it. Now let's see we get a response or not. So in here, what I need to do first, I need to give it to the Jarvis, then I have to give it to the virtual assistant. Okay, make sure your controller name is correct at all, and also your server should be okay, that you can see your server is also running up and down. Now let's go on here and click on send, and just waiting for the response. Okay, cannot get because it's a post method. And now let's click on send. You can say controller is calling. That's when our controller is also working. Sorry, controller or routes? Oh, sorry, that's the routes. Let's say uh okay, so this is called the controller part, because to also add it in our controller folder. This is called the controllers. So that's one point actually. So now you can also creating here this controller in a separate folder, because this is the actual structure that to follow into creating here our applications. So now what I can do, you can also creating here our controller inside our controller folder, I mean this folder. But before that, it's better you can simply going to creating here our services, and after that you're going to calling the controller. Because inside this controller we have all of the information, just like the open YouTube, open GitHub, or just for the latest news, like that. Because this is the actual point. So that's better. We can creating here our services, and after the create, we're going to creating here our controllers. So let's go on to inside these services. First, we're going to creating here our Wikipedia services. Let's go on here. We're going to creating here a file called Wikipedia services. Okay, service.js. So first you can import here the Axios. Let's say import here the Axios, because you're going to calling the API call here from Axios. And after that you're going to also import here the chair IO. So let's import statics. So let's import statics as chair IO from chair IO. So this is the way that is actually cited inside the npm packages, that you need to actually use it like that in the documentations. If I go inside the documentations, just say, let's say npm, okay, let's say this is for the Groq SD, right? And if I searching for the tier, okay, let's see with tier IO, then you can see how that you can see it also importing here like this way. That's why I actually import here like this way, you can just go on this npmjs.com and you can search for the packages. Cool. Now you're going to be creating here a function, and our function should be the async function. Let's say async, and you're going to be creating the functions. And now let's give here a function name called, let's say, search Wikipedia, like that. Okay. So it will taking one query as well as it will taking the maximum line, because in case of the Wikipedia, it have the maximum number of lines. In the case of Wikipedia, it had the multiple number tag as well. So let's take it the multiple number of lines is nothing but let's say 5 lines. Okay, just for testing purposes. Now inside that, what I can do, you're going to creating here and try and catch block, and inside this catch options, we're going to catching here our errors. So we can simply go into true and errors, or you can also console.log. So you can simply go into console.log the error, and then you can also use the true error so that you can also see it inside of our console. Otherwise, you can also send some response to your postman. So you can do like that. Let's say rest dot status, because this is an error message. So you can simply understand the status of that. But here we are not going to use the rest dot status, just because of you don't have any uh, we don't have any requested body functions. So we are not able to actually response it. So we can simply throwing an error, and this error is catching by to our controller, and inside this controller you can sending the request to our users by the postmans. So through an errors, now inside this try block, what I can do, first we are going to actually creating here our URLs. So we can simply go to using here, let's say const this is our API URL, and our API URL is nothing but the HTTP en Wikipedia org w api.php, like that. And after that, you're going to calling here the API calls using the Axios library. So you can using here the response is equal to await axios.get. You're going to give it here the API URLs, and then you have to give it here some kind of parameters. So first parameter is nothing but our query. So what I can do, you can simply go to do like that, and inside that I need to give it here like that. Okay, now inside that, what I can do is simply going to give it here my params, the params. And inside this params, what I can do, first you're going to give it the actually actions. So action is nothing but our query, so you can give it here the query. And then in the case of list, we're going to give it here as a search list, and src result is nothing but my variable that is coming from here. This is nothing but my query, and format is nothing but a JSON format. That's it. That's it. Okay, fine. So this is the response that we got. Now you need to actually do some processing inside our response. So first you're going to see that if the result is found or not. Okay, so what I can do, we can get in here an if statement. Let's say if, let's say search Wikipedia dot data dot query, because it will give you the query. We add it to here as query dot length. Okay, query dot search dot length. Okay, search dot length not found. So you can throw an error that no search result found. So you can say that throw the errors, new errors, no result found, like that. Now we got in here our result. Now you can simply going to store it inside the variables, and also we can start the response from here. So what I can do, first you're going to start in here the title, and then you're going to start in here the informations based on that. So we can simply go into start it. So now let us start here the title. There's a const title is equal to response dot data dot query dot search and title. And after that, what I can do is simply going to take in the page URL. So let's say page URL is equal to the HTTP or encoded, I mean en the wikipedia.org, and it's simply going to encode it here this URL component based on the titles. And after that, you're going to starting here the page resource using here this get from the page URL that we got, because we just been getting here some format in the form of JSON. And after that, you're going to adding the title based on that, and inside that you're going to pass it inside .get. And after that, you have some page response. Now you can simply going to load it. So what I can do, you can simply go to using a const $sign is equal to cheer io.load, and from that you can accessing here the tag. Okay, now you can simply access the tag based on the p tag, because most of the cases In the case of Wikipedia, it nothing but have the p tag. So we can simply go into static, let's say const the full text. So full text is equal to we can access it, let's say based on the p tag. So let's say based on the p tag, we can give it here the p tag, and then it's simply taking the text from here. And then you're going to creating here the lines, and you're going to slice these based on the max line. So because you give it to the 5 max lines, so it will starting here the 5 lines from here. Now you can simply returning here the content. So you can simply return here, let's say return here the lines, let's say lines in the from a content, it's a content, and then you can give it here the lines dot join of the backslash ends. Okay, now you can simply go into actually testing this out. So what I can do is simply going to go inside our controller, controller or the virtual route. So in the case of virtual route, you actually calling the controller. So you're also creating here our controller for that. So let's creating here a controller. So let's go on here and creating here a file called assistant controller.js. So let's create the controller. So what I can do first, we are going to importing here the search Wikipedia. So let's say search Wikipedia as a search, but we are not export it yet. So it also export here the functions. That's also one mistake. Let's export here the default the search Wikipedia. So you can go on here and you can import it. Let's say search Wikipedia from search Wikipedia services.js. And after that, you're going to creating here a function. Let's say export. This is an async functions, and you're going to creating functions called virtual assistant, which one is nothing but one async functions, right? And after that, inside that, you're going to creating here the try and catch block. Let's make it try and catch block. And in the case of catch block, we're simply returning here our error. So you can say that something error. So you can say that, let's say console dot log, and inside that you're going to give it here the errors, and then you can also send the response. Let's say send the status of 500, and you can sending here the error message on here, as well as you can send it in the case of JSON format. Let's send it in the form of JSONs. So error is equal to error.message, and you can also give it here success or not it at all. So that's it. Now we are calling here the search Wikipedia functions inside our controller. So what I can do, we can simply going to calling this out. So we can using here this search Wikipedia. So let's go on here, try block, and we are going to first taking the data from the requested body, requested body. So let us structure it. So we have the const of two things. One is called the query, and the max lines. Okay, max lines that we pass it inside our Wikipedia search that you can see. Now it's destructure the data from the requested body. Now you can simply go into checking here if the query is null or not. Let's see if the query is not null, like that. And then inside that you're simply going to returning here some errors. So you can return here, let's say return here as instead of 400 query is required, like that. Okay, then after that we simply going to using here this await methods with the search Wikipedia, and you can passing here this max line as well. So you can also using the parse int. So what I can do, you can simply go to parse int, so that you can parsing here the integer data, because it is coming from the integer data. So you can using here parse int, and you can give it here this max line, give it here the max line parse int, and you can pass it here the max line, and just make it max line as a 5 line if it is not parsing. Now, so this is nothing but my response. I mean, this is nothing but my result. So let's say const result, and then you can simply going to send the response. Let's say res.send, or you can also send it in the form of JSONs, and let's send the results, because this is coming in the form of JSON data formats. So let's save it. Now if I go inside this virtual route, and if I am going to import it, let's import here the assistant controller, or you can say the virtual assistant, because this is coming from this uh, assistant controller and it is nothing but a function itself. So you can go inside that, you can using his controller.js, and you can simply go into calling it from here. So you can use it here, the virtual assistant. Okay, now let's save it. Now let's go inside our postman, and now inside that you can simply going to go inside this body and raw, and text should be the JSONs. Now I need to give it here the JSON data. The first thing is nothing but call a query. So give it here a query. Let's say who is who is MSD. Okay, or you can say that the MSD like that. I mean Mahendra Singh Dhoni. And then in the max lines, so you can say that max lines, let's give it the 5 as a max line. Let's click on send. So you can see request body is not a functions. Okay, so yes, it's not a functions. Let's go on here. So just make it the functions. That's the problem actually. So now let's click on send. So to send a request, cannot read the properties of undefined reading query. Is anything wrong? So the error is actually happening just because of it's not finding here the query, because we're calling here the search Wikipedia function in our statement. So this is not even a variable of response, because we're going to checking here the data.query, the search.length. So to make it as a response, now let's save it and let's checking for that if our service is running. Yep, our service is also running. Let's go on the postman and I just make it as a MS Dhoni, and now let's click on send, and it is sending the request to our server. And let's check on here. Yup, no error, and you also got the response. Dhoni, The Untold Story is a 2016 Indian Hindi language biographical short drama film directed and co-written by Neeraj Pandey. It is based on the life of former Test ODI and the T20 captain of the Indian international cricket team, Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Cool. We actually get a response from the Wikipedia as well. Now what I can do is simply creating here our another services. That's nothing but called the new services. So let's go on here and creating this one. So this is nothing but my new service. So let's say new service.js. So for that, you're going to using here an API called the news API. Just need to go the browsers and search for the news API, and you can get the page like that. So this is the news API website. Just go on that and sign up with your email account, and then you can access your API key. So just go on the documentations. We are going to searching for the headings. So let's click on top headings, and then I'm going to copy here the course. I'm going to copy here this API link because it's needed at all. I'm going to copy this one, and after that, let's go inside our VS Code. So first, I'm going to importing here the Axios library because it's needed to accessing here the API key or API URLs so that you can hit it. Okay, let's import here the Axios. So let's import here the Axios from Axios, and then you're going to creating here a variable for the API URL. So our API URL, and I'm going to pass it here that I copied. And after that, I just remove here this question mark sign, and then I'm going to creating here a function. So this is nothing but the async function. Let's say async function. Let's make the function name called get news, and then I'm going to creating here the try and catch block. So let's say try and catch, and in the catch block I'm just going to returning here the errors. So let's say console dot log, and then I'm going to say that let's say error in fetching the news. We can send like that. Let's say error like that, or error in fetching news like that. So then you're going to throw an error. Let's say throw the errors. Now what I can do is simply going to storing here the API key inside our .env file. So let's go inside this .env, and inside this we're going to creating here a variable called news API, and then inside that I'm going to pasting here my news API key from the news API key website. So I passed here my news API key that I copied from the news API website. Now let's go inside this new services, and then I'm going to using this one. Now let's creating here a variable called response. Let's say const response is equal to a weight of Axios dot get request, and inside that you're going to give it here my API URL, this one. Now inside that it also give it here the params. So in the case of params, first you're going to give it to the country. You can give it to the country as the US or India or any kind of country. So let's give it the country name as the US. I mean, you're going to accessing here the news from the API, news from the US. So let's say API key. So let's make it API key, and then you're going to access it from the .env file. Let's say process.env, and then you're going to give here the name of the variable called news API. So let's say news API. Okay, this our uh, this is set inside our environment variable, and this is nothing but my API key. Now from here we're going to accessing here the article. So in our response variable it will store, so we can access it. Let's say response dot data dot article. So let's say article, and then let's store it inside a variable. Let's say const article. So articles like that. And after that I'm going to simplify the article. So let's say const simplify the article, and then I'm going to using here this article dot maps, and then I'm going to starting the titles and the description as well. So I can remove the URL, it's not needed at all. And then I'm going to return here the simpler the article. Now I can use it and I can call it to our assistant controller. Yep, I can call it from here. So I'm just going to removing here this part, because we already testing here in the case of Wikipedia. Now it's time to testing here the news ones. So we can simply go to removing here these things. So first we're simply going to destructure the query. So let's say const, we can destruct the query. Let's say query, and you have the request dot body. So let's say request dot body, and after that you need to also import here this news API, sorry, news services. So you need to also export it. So let's export default. So let's export default the get news. So you're going to using this one. So let's import here the get news from the news services.js, and then we're simply going to use it so we can access it easily. I mean, you can simply going to calling this one. Let's say const the news is equal to await the get news, and after that we can getting here our data. So we can simply going to using here actually one for loop to iterate to all the news from here. Otherwise you can also show it. Let's say console.log, we can show the news like that. So let's save it, and now I don't think that you need to give it here any kind of query, because it's not taking any query at all. So you can just calling here the functions. So you can save it, and you can go inside here, and we just make it nan. And if I click on send request, it will calling to the API. So if I go on here, you can see in the consoles, it have the several types of newses that you can see in the form of JSON format. It has the titles, Israel stacked the Lebanon after first rocket attack since the ceasefire. Very bad news. And Poppy Francis is to be discharged from hospital on Sunday, CNN. Okay, you can see the title and the descriptions. You can also printing this out. So let's say if I try to printing in the first one, let's say Zirut, and if I make it the title, so I can also print the title. Otherwise you can also send the response on here. So if I send the response, let's say rest.send, so I can send the response, or I can send the JSON data, because this is nothing but a JSON itself. So JSONs, and inside that I'm going to pass in here the news as well. So now let's save it, and let's go on the postman, and now let's click on send. So I hope so I got some response on here in the form of JSONs that you can see. So this is the news in the form of JSONs. Now we can start taking the latest one, I mean first news. So how can you do that? We can simply response taking for the title, and we can simply going to show it. Okay, let's save it. And now if I click on send, then you can see the response. Okay, this is the latest news from the bbc.com. Cool. That's been our news API is also working. Now there's a final part. A final part is nothing but called creating here the LLM services. Okay, I mean our Groq SDK, and using that you can accessing here our large language models. Now let's implementing this one. Let's go inside this service folder, creating here a file called llm service.js. So we changing this controller because so many code will be writing on here, just like if an else clock, just like open YouTube, open GitHub. That's why I'm not going to creating here the controller for the full field yet. So let's try to creating here this LLM services. So it's better you can close all of them and just opening here these ones. Okay. So first what I can do is simply going to importing here the Groq SDK. So let's import here the Groq from the Groq SDK. Then you're going to creating here a client. So you can simply going to say that const Groq is equal to new Groq, and inside that to give it here my API key. So to set up here my Groq API key, and I can use it then. So let's go on the Groq Cloud dashboard and accessing here our API key. So this is the Groq Cloud workspace. Here you can accessing here our API key, and you can simply go to using here our large language model. If I go inside this documentations and inside this model, you can see that there are several types of model are available. So I'm just going to go inside this API key, and then I'm going to creating here a new API key. Let's create API key. You can give it here any kind of name. Let's give it as a MERN, and then let's click on verify you are human, and after that click on submit. Then you can get here one API key. So I'm simply going to copying this out, and I'm going to go inside our Jarvis, I mean our VS Code, and then I'm going to pass it to here in our .env file. So let's creating here a variable called Groq. Let's say Groq underscore API underscore key, and then I'm simply going to paste it here, the Groq API key. Then I'm simply going to using it inside my LLM service.js. So you can see Groq underscore API underscore key, that you can see the same name. Now we're simply going to creating here a function. Let's create a function. Let's say async functions, and then we're simply going to give here one function name. So let's give it to here, let's say function, let's make it as a get response. Let's get response, and it will taking one prompt. You can give it here as a text, whatever else. And after that we're simply going to creating here one chat completions using this Groq chat completion. So let's creating this out. Let's say chat completion, const chat completions is equal to a weight of the Groq dot chat dot completion dot create, and inside there to passing here on objects, and here to give it the model name. So model name, let's give it the model of llama 3.3 17 be versatile. If you go inside that, and if I go and done documentations models, and I can copy here this model name, you can click on here, it will automatically copy to your clipboard, and you can simply going to pass it here to your model name. And after that I'm simply going to give it here some messages. So let's say message, and inside this messages we are going to give it here one objects, and here we have the role. So role is nothing but the users, and then you know, to give it here the content. So you can give it the content as your prompt, but if you want to just clarify it or make a summary of that, you can also do that. Let's say I'm going to asking a question, what is Python? So it will give you some long response. So it's better you can give it here some kind of prompt engineering technique, then it will give you just a summary of the user query. Okay, so what I can do is simply going to using here the dollar sign, or you can simply going to using here this backtick, and inside this backtick you're going to using here this dollar sign, and inside that you're going to give it the prompt, and then you can give some kind of instructions. Let's say please, okay, please provide a concise, okay, provide a concise summary in 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, sentences, good. Now we're simply going to give it here some max token. Let's give it here max token. So max token, let's give it here 100 max tokens, and then we are simply going to be running it here. So let's return it, Let's return here the chat completions dot choice of message and the content. Cool. Now we can simply going to calling this out inside our assistant controller, because in the controller side we are going to calling here our uh, our controller, right? So we can simply going to import it. So let's import. We need to also export our services, right? So we need to also export our services. So what I can do, we can using here the export. So let's say export. We can also using here default, or other you can also using here the get response like that. So let's make it default get response, and you can calling it inside it here. Okay. So let's say get response. So get response, and you're going to using here this get response. Now let's try to using it here. So what I can do is simply going to calling here the function. So our function name is nothing but called the get response. So you need to also wait, because this is an asynchronous operations get response, and inside that you're going to give it here the prompt. So request.body.prompt you can give it to here, and then we can simply going to make it const the llm response. And after that you can also destructure the prompt on here, so you can also making like that. It's a const, you're going to destructure the prompt from the requested body, and you can give it the prompt on here. Okay, you can give it the prompt like that. Otherwise you can also using a request.body.prompt, because it's nothing but an object itself. Then after that what I can do is simply going to send the request. Let's say rest dot status of 200, status of 200, and then you're going to sending the response. So let's save it, and then we can simply going to go on our postman. So this is our link. So go on the body, and inside this body select here the raw, and JSON is already here, and then you give it here on prompt. Let's say give it to the prompt, and then you simply going to type here, let's say what is Python. Okay, it should be a Python. Now let's click on send. Okay, it's not working just because of we are not starting the server yet. So let's go on here, start our server. Let's say npm start. Just because of I paused the video for some issue, I need to start the again, that's why. So it will start in the server. So just to wait for a few seconds. Yep, it has started the server. Now we can send the request right now. Send. It will connecting to our server, I mean localhost. Again, not just waiting for a few seconds because it's the first time, right? So you got an error. That's mean Groq API is not set up in the environment variable, but we set it down, but it's not finding. So what I can do, we can simply going to import here the .env. Let's say import here the .env from .env. Then you can simply going to config here this .env.config. Sometime it's unable to finding here the API key. That's also one problem. Now you can see the error is resolved. So if I go on here and click on now send, and if I go inside that, so nothing happened. If I see, you can see here we also got the response. Python is a high-level interpreted programming language known for its simplicity, readability, and the versatility. It is widely used for various applications such as web development, data analysis, artificial intelligence, and automations. Due to its extensive library and easy to learn syntax, Python is popular choice among beginners and experts alike, making it a great language for both personal projects and professional environment. If you want to know more about that, you can follow my multiples of 100 plus data science project series. So how are you writing code, how are you building so many projects? Cool. That's when our LLM response is also working. Now, what I can do, we can simply go into now completing here this assistant controller. So here we have the open YouTube, open GitHub, open Instagram like that. Okay. So we can simply go into removing this thing from here. So we can simply go into importing here some of the important library. So first we are going to import here the say, so that our assistant can say. And also I'm going to import here the open, so that you can also open some kind of link. So you also import the search Wikipedia, get news, get response. Okay. Now inside this try block, what I can do, first we are going to starting the text, send text from the request.body. So you can use here request.body. So from the requested body, you're going to destructure the text, because you just give it here one text. So let's make it let because it's changeable. We are not able to make it as a constant. So let's taking the structure text, and after that you're going to making this text to the lower. So let's say text dot to lowercase, so that it will just coming as a lowercase letter. And after that you're going to console.log, we're simply going to printing here the text. And then we can simply go into actually cleaning the text, just like, let's say I'm just going to give it here a query. Let's say open YouTube sir, so it will just removing here the sir from that, or please open the YouTube. It will also removing the please. That means some kind of greeting thing that's I'm going to removing on here. So let's say let clear text, I just make it as a variable name. Let's clear text is equal to text dot replace, and inside that I'm simply going to uh, give it here, let's say uh, the b, the syntax is look like that, b. So we have the please, so let's say please, and then uh, we need to give it here some kind of thing like that. So highlight it, yeah, like that. And then you have the now, let's say can, then or let's say can you, and also the kindly. So those kind of thing it will actually removing from our input variables. Okay, so then we can simply going to give it here the b, and then after that you can give it the same thing, and you can using here gi, and then it's simply going to make it as an empty string if it is getting this kind of prompt. Okay, now our text is clean, and now we can simply trimming this out. So you can using here trim. Okay, now we have our clean text. Now first let's import, try to initialize here the open YouTube, and let's see it will working or not. So we simply going to go on here, and then we simply going to give it here a command. Let's see if the clean text, that's a clean text dot include. So let's include includes, let's say open YouTube, like that. Open YouTube, let's say open YouTube. Okay, if the plain text is include the open YouTube like that, so what I can do is simply going to opening the YouTube as well as the say. So let's say say dot open. Okay, third dot speak, sorry, speak. Let's say opening YouTube, let's say opening YouTube, and after that we can simply go into open here the www.youtube.com. So now let's save it and try to testing this out, that is really working or not. So to give it inside the text or prompt, it's not text. If I see it's nothing but the prompt, so we can make it as a text itself. uh, that's not a big deal actually, because we just give it the text. Let's give it as the text. So let's go in the postman and let's make it as a text. Now let's say open YouTube, let's say open YouTube. Now let's click on send. So you can see that it will open in the YouTube. Cool. Yep, it's open in the YouTube that you can see.
Opening YouTube.
Okay. See, also you can hear the voice. That's mean our services is working perfectly. Now what I can do, we can simply go into implementing here the source Wikipedia one. So let's say uh, if the clean text include here the Wikipedia, or you can also start with the search on Wikipedia like that. So you can also using here the includes, or you can also using here start with. So what you can do, you can simply make it as the else if. So let's say else if, and then first you get implementing here the Wikipedia one. So if the clean text include the Wikipedia or the search on Wikipedia like that, let's say search on Wikipedia like that. So what it can do, it will just replacing, it will try to start actually deleting here the search on Wikipedia from the user input and just taking the raw text. So what I can do, you can simply go into creating here, let's say search query, let's say search query. So search query is nothing but a clean text. Okay, is a clear text. So you're going to replacing this search Wikipedia to the empty string. That's mean if I asking the questions to the Jarvis, let's say who is MS Dhoni, search on Wikipedia. So it is just removing here the search on Wikipedia, and it will passing the who is MS Dhoni to the API of the Wikipedia. Then if the search query it have, if you have the search query, if you have the search query, so what I can do, we can simply going to start in the data from here. So we can start it using this search Wikipedia function. So you can using here the search Wikipedia, and inside that we're simply going to give it here my search query. Okay, so this is nothing but an variable. Let's say const, we can make it as a Wikipedia data. Okay, let's say Wikipedia data, and we can also give it the await because it is the API call, so it's also waiting for that. Okay, await search Wikipedia. Cool. Now if the Wikipedia data have, if you have the Wikipedia data and Wikipedia dot content, if it have the content, we can simply go into console.log. So let's say console.log, and we can simply go into printing the content. Let's say Wikipedia dot content, and then we can also speak it. So let's say speak the Wikipedia contents, right? You can also give it the await if it is waiting for that, because say is nothing but one asynchronous function. It's not waiting for the next move. It will execute the full line in once a time, and then you can simply going to give it the rest dot status of 200, and then you can simply going to show it here our response. Let's say status of 200, and we simply could response here our Wikipedia data in the form of JSONs. Okay, you can also printing it here Wikipedia data dot content. Okay, you can print it like that, so it's better you can make it in the form of JSONs message. So let's say message, and inside that you can give it here the Wikipedia dot contents. So if it is not working, if you don't have any data, so you can simply make it an else statement. The content is not found, so you can give it here else rest.status, please provide a search query, or we can say that error processing here the input. Okay, we can give it to here. So or we can also give it here content not found, like that. Okay, we can say that error processing in processing your request, like that. Then we have this if statement inside that. Now in here, okay, in here it's nothing but one if clause. So we can also give it here another clause on here if you need it, because it's nothing but inside this clause. And I hope so it's include, if the search query is here, if the search query is here, then we just give it here one else block. Okay, that's it. Cool. Let's check for again. Yeah, here is closing. So if the search query is here, it will trimming them, it will starting the search query, it will checking here this one. Okay, this content is nothing but on here, it should be on here. Copy this out, and we need to give it as else condition block. That's why I'm asking why the clause is uh, missing. So we can give it here, please provide here some kind of informations. Okay, okay, let's make it right now, and then you can also speak it. So let's say speak, you can say that please provide, let's say please provide a search query. You can also copying this out because this is the error things, so you can simply going to paste it to here. Okay, so block is correct. Yep, here you go, we have the if block, else block, and the else block on here. Now let's save it, and now let's go inside that, let's closing here. Okay, let's go on here first. Now here what I can do, let's say search on Wikipedia who is MS Dhoni. Okay, we're testing this out. You can see search on Wikipedia, and if I click on send, so waiting for the response. Yep, you can see we got the response.
Mahendra Singh Dhoni, /MOAHNDROESIDHN/Gamma, born July 7, 1981, is an Indian professional cricketer who plays as a right-handed batter and a wicket-keeper. Widely regarded as one of the most prolific wicket-keeper batsmen and captains and one of the greatest ODI batsmen, he represented the Indian cricket team and was the captain of the side in limited overs formats from 2007 to 2017 and in Test cricket from 2008 to 2014. Dhoni has captained the most international matches and is the most successful Indian captain. He has led India to victory in the 2007 ICC World T20, the 2011 Cricket World Cup, and the 2013 ICC Champions Trophy, being the only captain to win 3 different limited overs ICC tournaments. He also led the teams that won the Asia Cup in 2010, 2016 and was a member of the title-winning squad in 2018.
Cool. You also got the response, who is Mahendra Singh Dhoni, right? Thala for a reasons, right? Okay, so what I can do, you can simply closing this out. That's been our search on Wikipedia function is also working fine. Now you can simply go into checking it here. Open YouTube is also working. Now you can copying this out and then you can paste it here. So what you can do next, we are going to opening here the Instagram, Facebook like that. So you can make it, let's say open the GitHub. Let's say GitHub, and then you can say that opening GitHub, and you can just give it here www.github.com. You can give it here any kind of thing, GitHub or the Instagram. We can give it here, let's say give it to the open Google. So you can say that opening Google. So then you can give it here the google.com, and you can also opening here the Instagram. So let's Instagram, and then you can say that opening Instagram, and then you can using here the URL. Let's say Instagram. Okay, you can also add it here, so many kind of functions on here. It's up to you. So you can also say that if the user, like let's say hey assistant or hey Jarvis, it will also give you some kind of response. So what I can do, let's say uh, hey Jarvis or hey Jarvis, and it will also speak here. Let's say I'm just going to give it here, let's say I am Jarvis. Okay, let's say hello. First say hello like that. uh, Hello. Hello, I am Jarvis, how can I help you, like that. So if I save it and if I go on here, let's say hey Jarvis. Okay, if I make it as a fullest, yeah, in the capital way, let's say Jarvis, and if I click on send.
Hello, I am Jarvis. How can I help you?
Okay, that you can see it, but it's not sending the request because you are not sending a request to here. That's the problem, we are not getting it. But yep, it's working. Now let's try to implementing here the news one. So what I can do, you can simply go to using here, let's say else if the clean text dot include here the news, and then you can simply go to calling here the functions. Let's say const the news data. Let's say news data is equal to, you can simply go to await the news data, get news. And after that, if the news data have, if we have the news data, so if I have the news data, as well as if the length of the news data is greater than 0, and news data dot length is greater than 0, then you can simply be processing it here. So you're going to console.log, and then you can say that news data, or you can printing the first news one, I mean first news from the response. So and then you can simply going to speak it. Let's say await sad or speak, and we're going to speaking the first ones, and you can also send the request to our postman. So you can also console.log the all of the news here. So you can also using here the for statement on here. So you need to also add here the else block. So you can give it here rest dot uh, status of 400 that error processing a request, like that. Okay, I can save it, or I can also printing here all of the response in the form of um, console. Okay, in the form of text in the consoles. But I don't think that is not needed at all. Just we're going to accepting here the first headline. So now let's go on here, and now let's say today top news. Okay, if I click on send.
Hendrickson stunned Stevenson to win wrestling title, ESPN.
Cool. So it will giving here response like that. that you can see. It will just taking here the first one. If I give it here the number one, let's give it a number one. You can also using the random one. Okay, you can also give it a random to getting some random response on
Arkansas
here.
Razorbacks vs St. John's Red Storm live score and stats, March 22nd, 2025 game tracker, CBS Sports.
Okay, it's give the response the first one. That's why. Let's give it here one again, and now let's click on send.
Arkansas Razorbacks vs St. John's Red Storm live score and stats, March 22nd, 2025 game tracker, CBS Sports.
Okay, so from the CVS to export, it will just give you the response. Okay, so you can also console the log the whole of the informations about the news data. You can just give to hitting here a for loop. You can just start it. Okay, so that's been our news is also working fine. Now we're going to give it here our final one, which one is nothing but our large language model response. That's else we're going to using here the response uh, from the large language model, and you can simply going to console block the response, and you can avoid the set of the speak of the response, and you also send the response to the users. Okay, so you can also make it as a just one single line, or you can make it two lines. Okay, two sentences. So if I go on here and if I asking any kind of questions which one is not available inside our if and else blocks, it will give the response. Let's say what is LangChain. Okay, so it is not available inside our else, I mean if and else block. So you can see LangChain.
LangChain is an open source framework that enables developers to build applications on top of large language models, providing a set of tools and libraries to interact with and integrate these models into various projects. By leveraging LangChain, developers can create custom interfaces, workflows, and applications that harness the power of language models, such as chatbots, text analysis tools, and automated content generation systems.
Cool, it will also get the response. Now you're actually creating here our controllers, so you can simply go into creating here our UI section inside our views. So inside our views, what I can do, you're going to creating here a file, let's say called main.ejs. Okay, because you're going to be using here the ejs in these cases. So for that, it also installing this out the ejs. So let's go on here and stop the server, and then we can simply going to say that npm I ejs. Okay, and then we're simply going to give it to here, I mean go inside that, and then you're going to creating here the html templates. So you can say that the doc type html like that, let's say doc type html, just creating here an boilerplate code, and inside that you're going to creating here the h1 tag. So let's say hello world. Okay, so it is also installing the EGS. I hope so. Make sure that your internet is connected. And after that, what I can do is simply going to use it inside our index.js. So inside our index.js, what I can do after this app, we are going to set it. So you can using here app.set, and inside that you're going to give it here the view engines as the EJS. You can say that view engines, you can see here it will also give the auto suggestions. View engine is equal to EJS. So it automatically getting here these views folder inside our directory. Okay, now you can start our server. Let's say npm start. It will start the server, and then we can simply going to close it. And instead of using the get request of this like the one, we're simply going to rendering here these main.ejs. So what I can do, you can simply go into rest.render, and you can simply go into using here this main one. Okay, so it will give you here this main.ejs file. Okay, same thing. So if I go into this index.js that you can see on here, we render the main one. So now let's checking this out. So okay, so right now in the browsers, and our server is also running up and down. So let's type here the local host, let's say 8080. So I hope so you got the response hello world that you can see on here. Okay, that's been our EJS template is also working. Now what I can do, I am simply going to writing here some types of code. It's nothing but for the designing, so I'm not going to wasting the time to creating the designing on here. You can also using the React.js in the case of front end part. So I'm just going to creating here some kind of boilerplate code and using the tailwind CSS, and here also some JavaScript tags also it also implementing on here. So I'll back again when the code is done. All right, so our designing is complete. So we can simply going to go on the Microsoft Edge make sure that you are using the Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. So you can close all of them, just opening here this EJS one. So now let's see how our UI look like. So if I checking this out, our server is also running. Let's go on the Microsoft Edge, then typing here localhost 8080, and you can hit enter. So you can see here Jarvis assistant, that you can see it also having some gluing effect you can see on here. So if I clicking on here, nothing is happened. So it's better you can go on the full screen mode so that it look good right now. Jarvis AI active listening, also it will alerting for the command. Now we need to attach with to our API that we created in the backend server. Okay, so for that, what I can do is simply going to do it inside the script tag, because you're going to writing here the JavaScript code. So if I see the code, the HTML code, it's just having one H1 tag, and which will have the headings. Also having a button, and button name is called the start recognitions. And then we have an ID called text data, where the text input data is visible. So it's simply taking here one script tag. So let's say script, and inside stack we're going to writing here our JavaScript code. So first you need to taking here this start recognition. So for that you're going to using here the DOM. So you can using here document dot, let's say document dot get element by ID, because you also give here the ID of the button. So in here you're going to give it here the button, uh ID name, what is called the start recognition. This one, this start recognitions. So you can store it inside a variable, let's say const start. And after that we are going to calling, we are going to same get the element of the text data as well. So you can also store it, let's say const text data is equal to document dot get element by ID, and you're going to give it here the text data. Simple. Now we're going to adding here one listener, add event listener inside our button. So our button is nothing but the start. Start recognition is the button. So how the user clicking on this button, so an event is called. So you can say that start dot add event listener, and inside this listener you're going to give it here our listener type is nothing but a click. Let's say click, and then you're going to creating here a callback functions, and must be your function should be the async, is a asynchronous functions. And after that is simply going to call it. Okay, now inside these listener functions, when the user click on that, first you're going to writing here and console.log of listening. You can say that console.log, let's say listening like that, let's say listening for command like that. And after that, what I can do, we are going to give some pulse animations that you can see in the demo. So we're going to add it. Let's say text data dot class list. Let's say class list dot add. You're going to add here the pulse animations so that it look cool. Okay. Then after that, you're going to creating here recognitions. So let's creating here recognition. Let's say const recognitions. So using this one, you can recognize here the biases. Okay. So recognition, okay, should be a recognition. Make sure that your spelling is correct. And you're going to using here new WebSocket web space recognitions. So this method is only supported in the Microsoft Edges and Google Chrome. It's not working in Firefox or Brave browsers. Okay, so make sure that you are running these applications in the Microsoft Edges. And after that, what I can do, we are going to creating here the on result recognition dot on results. So inside this function, we having some kind of results. So we can say that on result is equal to async, and then you're going to give it here starting to the result from that. So let's say result, and then it nothing but and callback functions, and you can simply going to write in the code inside our on results. So our first task is nothing but to uh, actually translate here, or the transcript here the recognized text in the form of English. So let's say recognitions dot not recognize, actually we are going to getting it for the results. So let's say result, and you're taking here 0 of the 0th, and you're going to using the transcript. Okay, so you can say the transcript like that. Okay, That's when you're just getting here recognized text from the transcript. So you can make it, let's say make sure your spelling is correct. You can say transcript, 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 and this is nothing but my recognized text. So let's say cons recognized text. That's it. And after that, you're going to remove here the text data uh, pulse animations because it's not needed at all. I need transcript. And after that, you're going to uh, give it here some kind of text in our text data dot content. So in our text data, it will just adding here the recognized text. So this recognized text, we also adding here some kind of icon. So I also stored here the icon. Let using here this icon. So I'm going to add it to here. So just made it here icons, and then you can using here this recognized text. So when the text is recognized, you're simply going to pass it inside our API. I mean our backend API. So for that, you're creating here the try and catch block. And in the case of catch block, we're simply going to console.error. So let's say console, okay, not console actually, console.log, and you can simply going to give it here the error, and then you can simply going to set to the text data. So let's say text data dot text content, so that you can also see inside your text content. I mean this content, if I'm talking about this awaiting command. Okay, this is the text data command that you can see we actually add it on here. Okay, so we're simply going to make it, let's say error the sending request like that. Let's say error sending a request. So you can also add it to the some kind of icons. You can do copy this out, and you're going to paste it to here. Okay, well, and after that, let's go inside this try block and try to calling here our API. So for that, I'm going to using the fetch. So let's say await fetch, and inside this fetch, I need to give it here my path. So let's go on the postman and copy here the path. This is the path, I mean the link, and then I'm simply going to paste it to here, and then we're simply going to give it to the methods. So let's say comma, and then you have the methods. So method is nothing but the post method, and body header is nothing but the content types is application of JSONs, and then it also give it to the body, and body is nothing but the parser. Okay, in the from a JSON string file, you can see it will automatically actually give the auto suggestions. So we have the headers, right? We have the headers, and then you have the body. So let's say body, and body you're going to use here the JSONs. Okay, make sure you have to keep here on comma body dot stringify. You can using his stringify, and then you can simply going to give it to the text. It's nothing but the recognized text. And after that, you're simply going to calling here the functions that you created. So you can start it, recognize the start. Cool. That's it. Okay. Now let's start testing this out. So what I can do, I simply going to go on here to the applications, and if I see our service running or not, you can go on here. If our service also running, now we can go on here. Now click on activate listening. What is Python? So it's not working just because of need to start the server again, because we do some changes inside our EGS file. That's why. So what I can do, we are going to start our server again. So let's say npm start, and after that it will work. Okay, so it will starting the server right now again, and if I go on the applications, here you go, and if I reloading the applications, and let's go it's get the full screen mode that you can see. Now it's reloaded. If I click on activate listening, open YouTube.
Opening YouTube.
Okay, that you can see it will opening here the YouTube. Okay, so that you can see on here, open Google. So that
Opening
you can see
Google.
it will opening here the Google as well. Latest news today.
Germany is unlocking billions to supercharge its military at a seismic moment for Europe, CNN.
Okay, we also got here the latest news. What is Python programming language?
Python is a high-level, interpreted programming language known for its simplicity, readability, and versatility, making it a popular choice for beginners and experienced developers alike. It is widely used in various fields such as web development, data analysis, artificial intelligence, and more, due to its extensive libraries, easy-to-learn syntax, and large community of developers.
Cool. That you can see here, we also get the response from our Jarvis as well. So this is how we are going to creating here the Jarvis using the Express and the Node.js. So I hope so you like this entire video and tutorial. And I think so you subscribe the channel and share with your friends. That's it from my side. Namaste. And I'll be back with the tutorial. So till then, take care.